There we go. Hopefully it's working. Technology is giving me a little bit of a hard time. All right. Looks good. I'm gonna light this tiny ass smudge stick. Good morning. How's it going? I'm back. Get this sage burning. Hi, Kristen. Hi, Nutra. Hi, Julie. Hi, Alana. Hi, Alicia. Hi, Zippity. Hi, Lizzie. How's it going? Nice to be back with you guys. How is everyone? Hi, Tabitha. Hi, Eliza. Missed you guys too. What have you all been up to? Anything new and interesting? Just lighting my sage real quick. The guides have said you're going to do a good smudge on the house. Yes, I am. I only got home last night, 2 hours before my son's school orientation, so I really timed that well. Woo! Did you see that? Oh. Usually when that happens, you know, there's a lot to clear in the space. I'm gonna set my boobs on fire with that one. There we go. There is probably a lot to clear. It's been an eventful couple days. Nice to see you all. I've already got 50 people hanging out. I've missed you guys too. I hope you've all been having fun. I am back to my regular scheduling of podcasts. I will be here. I'm not going anywhere until November now. So I will be doing podcasts every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from now on. Back to our regular scheduling, sort of. Nice one, Eliza. Congratulations on moving. Hope everybody's been having a great summer. I've been off gallivanting and getting into mischief and going. Things have been very eventful the last few weeks, especially. So for those who have been wondering where I've been, I went all over Poland, and then I went all over Scotland, and then I went up to the Adirondack Park. So I've been up in the Adirondacks for the last week. And it's just been a really great trip, something that I needed, you know, getting my mind off of things a little bit. I'm still a bit of a workaholic. I work every day when it comes to chasing beasties because, well, I mean, it's not really work for me. It's pure pleasure. Although the last couple days have been very interesting in that regard, and I'll tell you guys all about it. Izzy says, where does your boy go when you travel? Most of the time he comes with me. But when I went to Poland, I knew I would be doing a lot of clearings, and I don't feel comfortable taking my child to places like Nazi death camps. Knowing that we were going to go and clear Auschwitz, I realized it would not be a good idea to bring him with me. So Aiden stayed behind with his grandma and went to summer camp while I was running around. So nice to see you, Ariana. Yes, I do have a semi-new cup. It's got all the cryptids on there. The reason I bought it was actually because of the Bigfoot and the Mothman. I love Mothman. I think the Mothman, they crack me up. I have all the beasties that we clear. I think the Mothmen are my favorite. Why? Because they're so stupid. They are so stupid they don't even connect. They don't even attach to people. They just haunt your house. But they are living, breathing creatures, for the record. A lot of people think of them as egregores, you know, thought forms, but they're not. They're living, breathing creatures. Pretty much every being on here is a living, breathing creature. Well, Cthulhu's a little different. There are octopuses that kind of look like him. So anyway, I like how Nessie is depicted in this cup because Nessie is actually a giant snake. He's not a plesiosaur. He's not a dinosaur. It's a big snake. There used to be a whole bunch of them that lived underground and, well, I should say underground, under deep tunnel systems that exist throughout all the deep lakes around the world. So it has been a very eventful couple days. I'm still kind of recovering from an incident. And I gotta crack, it's really funny. I should have one of those like little signs that they keep in the workplace. It has been such and such how many days since the last, well, reptilian attack. For me, it had been a few months. So I was kind of lulled into this false sense of being left the fuck alone. And we had a big clearing the other day, and we got a little bit of a retaliation from it. And I'll tell you guys about it in a minute, but it was quite amusing to know that whenever we piss off the lizards, we did something really good. So I give myself a little pat on the back. Anytime we get a bad attack, I'm like, oh, we must have pissed you off, didn't we? So, as many of you know, I have a medium that I've recently certified. Her name is Ella. You guys have met her if you've done the Children's Psychic Protection course. I've done a few other things with her, and Ella has been one of my friends for about 15 years. So I was quite surprised when the guides were like, oh yeah, she has a salation that's ready to connect. So she has a new salation guide named Zen. Some of you might have already seen the names on the reports. Ella's here. Hi, honey. And so you guys will get to meet her. She's coming on the podcast next week. And, whenever we get a new guide that comes through, it's fun to connect with them and get to know them a little bit. And Zen is a lot of fun. You guys will enjoy. He's got a wonderful personality. I mean, they all do, but everybody is different, including the Salations. And so Zen is, he's kind of like ready to work. He's very gung-ho about like, let's get some shit done. And the other day, as I was scrolling through Facebook, I see this little boy's face. It was posted in this hypnosis group that I'm in, where somebody was asking for prayers for this little boy. And I didn't even read the post. As soon as I'm scrolling, I see this adorable little face of a 5-year-old. And then I immediately see 2 grays. And so, oh, Facebook is freezing. Okay, well, if you guys are having any issues watching on Facebook, switch over to YouTube. We have a lot of people watching on YouTube these days as well. YouTube is less glitchy than Facebook. And it gives you better notifications as well if you subscribe. It'll tell you right when I go live. So I see this little boy, and I immediately see 2 grays in my mind's eye standing behind him. And I thought, oh no. And then I read the description, and sure enough, all the telltale signs of gray attack are in there. And I got a little bit emotional, and I posted underneath the chat. I said, I can perceive what's going on, and I can tell this little boy is being messed with. So I said I'm just gonna tackle this case. It was a bigger case than we expected. Ooh, glitches in the matrix. They're like, I'm gonna keep talking. I don't care. So anyway, I'm just choosing my words wisely. So anyway, we tune in to do a pro bono clearing on this little boy, and sure enough, we see a whole bunch of grays, and there was a big network of them. And this little boy was something special. He is one of those, if you guys remember, there's a very rare group of galactics that have chosen to come here. We don't even have a name for them yet. They're highly, highly telepathic, extremely high vibrational. In fact, I'm pretty sure they're light beings that have chosen to come down. They're not angelic to that degree, but they are extremely highly advanced, like probably like 10th or 12th dimensional beings, very powerful beings, and some of them are choosing to incarnate as children at this time. And so when they choose to come in, since these beings are highly telepathic, most of the children that are, this starseed race are nonverbal. And the reason for that is because in order to become verbal, they have to like basically downgrade their abilities. And so when you are telepathic, you can either choose to, downgrade those abilities, or you can embrace them but have a different way of thinking and of being, basically. So they are still born highly telepathic, to the point where they can read the minds of other people around them. They can perceive things that with the naked eye that other people cannot. They can see entities all around them. They're extremely gifted. And no, I'm not talking about indigos. Indigos are gifted children, but I'm talking, these are very rare children. And like I said, most of them are nonverbal because they've chosen to keep their gifts of telepathy, which would have been sacrificed if they have chosen to be verbal. You lose a lot of ability having the gift of verbal speech. And it's interesting that aspect, you would have to choose one or the other, but these children are choosing to remain highly telepathic, and in that regard, they do struggle to, express themselves. And what's also interesting is that doctors and other people who study these children are thinking that they're developmentally slow when they're basically geniuses. They're like savants. They can perceive things that normal people couldn't even dream of. And when you are limited in your ability to speak, it makes you look like the slow one when you're actually more advanced than the people that are testing you. Which is quite ironic if you think about it, that they're trying to depict this little one as developmentally slow, and he's not. He's highly advanced. If anybody has watched the telepathy tapes, I highly recommend checking out on YouTube. It's called the telepathy tapes. And so the telepathy tapes go into these, several of the children that are mentioned in there are these very special types of starseeds. And you can't communicate with them through conventional means. So you have to kind of make a game out of it and try and communicate with them. In fact, I was talking with my godmother the other day, and she used to work with special needs children. And she told me, she goes, when I look them in the eyes, when I stare into their beautiful eyes, I knew immediately what they needed. And I thought, oh, I love that. So there are people out there who can tell that many of these children are very telepathic. And yes, they do communicate through the eyes quite easily. If you can quiet the mind and sit down with them and be able to kind of focus on each other, you will perceive things. You will start getting downloads and just knowing things that you wouldn't normally be able to get from somebody who's got this verbal speech. So anyway, checking on this little boy, we found 2 grays. And somebody did ask, what are telltale signs of grays? Well, when children that are nonverbal can react to seeing something that scares them, when they're perceiving something. Sometimes it means that they'll be screaming or pointing, or they'll just be really upset about something and they can't really express why they're upset. Sometimes they have pain that you can't explain because they put all kinds of devices and things on these children. Sometimes they'll have all kinds of issues when it comes to rashes and other autoimmune things that pop up. It's just their body is reacting to what is happening around them in their environment. And when they're constantly under psychic attack, it creates this feeling of fear and insecurity, but also they have buildup of pain because these implants and devices are intentionally there to cause disruption and pain. So we removed all this junk from this little one, and we noticed that there were cords back to the facility where he picked them up. So I'm sure you know where I'm going with this. We traced the cords back to a facility in the area. Apparently the guides were telling me that he visits this facility regularly, and it is the facility itself that was compromised, and that's where he picked up the grays. So we traced the cords back to this facility, and we found that the entire facility was compromised. What do I mean by that? I mean, there was a body snatched lizard, a lizard who kicked the original inhabitant of the vessel out that was running the facility. So the facility for all these special needs children is being run by a lizard in a human skin suit, basically, which was quite upsetting to see. But now we found that the Greys and the lizards are working together because there were 4 hubs connected to this facility. What is a hub? A hub is like a Grey base. There are 12 Greys connected to each hub. They go back. It's kind of like their charging station. I don't know. Every time you got a drone, right? What do drones do? They have a hub, right? So if you think about it, that is their hub. So we find up to 12 Greys per hub. We found 4 hubs. You do the math. We caught nearly 50 Greys in one swoop. When we catch Greys, usually we're lucky if we can get 1 or 2 of them. We caught 50 of the little fuckers. And I was like, haha, you know, feeling good about it, as you do. And, you know, we did a clearing. We found there were 28 children connected to this facility that were being messed with by Greys. And the guides went and cleared every single one of the children. It was one of the biggest clearings. It was looked like a black web, they said, where it spread out and all these children were being affected. And obviously we can't do anything about a body snatched individual running the program, but at least, you know, we were able to get rid of all his little drones and workers, and it's going to set them back considerably with what they were doing in that area. That's a lot of food for them that we took away from them. So I knew we were going to get a little kickback. I knew that there was going to be some lizards pissed off. And since you can't do anything about the body snatched individual, I knew there would be a little bit of something coming back. Well, 2 nights ago, I'm staying at my godmother's house and we're just hanging out and I'm writing reports and I hear a loud thud in the room. And thinking it was an earthbound, I wasn't feeling any heart palpitations or anything. I just heard a loud bang in the room and there was nothing that fell. I didn't see anything at all. And I said, okay, if there's an earthbound or anybody else in here that is not welcome, get the fuck out now. Like, this is how you have to speak to them. You say, you are not welcome here, get out. You got to say with fervor, right? You got to be like, so I was like, nope, get out. And then all of a sudden I started to feel tired and I thought, okay, well, it's bedtime. So I went to sleep. And I had a dream that I was getting my ass kicked. I had a dream that something was like straight up like donk, donk on my head. And I woke up with a bad headache. And I immediately with my headache, I was like, mm-hmm. And then I started tuning in and I'm feeling the area and I did not feel Fergus. And I was like, uh-oh. Because I always feel Fergus very close to me. Fergus is my protector, for those who don't know. He's my gatekeeper, and I can always feel Fergus directly right behind me or next to me. And when I didn't feel his presence, I knew some shit went down. So I contacted my friend Ella, the same medium that did the clearing with me, and I asked her if she was free to do clearings, and she did. And so she was free, I mean. So we sat down, and I said, well, what have you been up to? And she says, oh, I dealt with an attack this morning. And I said, really? She goes, yeah, basically it felt like something grabbed me by my feet and hung me upside down. And I felt very dizzy and I didn't really know what was going on. And then, you know, we called in some backup and I started to feel better and I just felt very off for a little while, very ungrounded. I'll let her tell you more about it. But the more interesting thing is that her dogs were barking. Both of her dogs were barking at something that they couldn't see physically with the mind's eye. They could see if they were to close their eyes and kind of tune in, you can kind of perceive when they're around, but you can't see these beings physically. They're interdimensional. So the dogs actually could, and they were able to kind of know that something wasn't around or something that was around. So they called in the team and cleared it and everything. But then one of the dogs went into a seizure. You know, this is the worst part of this job is when we get retaliated and it's not us that's getting attacked. It's the people around us. So the dog is okay. Her dog's all right. But at the same time, this is one of the reasons why we say we really have to be mindful of where we stick our noses. So she cleared everything, and then she went into a trance, and I asked Zen what's going on, and Zen was explaining to me Fergus got locked up. He got attacked too. This is something that I've explained to you guys, that it's not just you that gets attacked when you're dealing with a psychic attack. Your soul guides get attacked too. And so I didn't ask too much detail because I was still a bit shaken by what had happened. And like I said, I was feeling very ungrounded and weird. Zen did some healing on me, and I started to feel much better. So later on that evening, I was talking with Zach last night when I got back from my long drive and all the things after I got home, and I sat down with Zach, Adriana's guide, and I said, what the hell happened? I need to know now. Now I'm prepared to hear what happened. And they said it was retaliation. Fergus saw 2 big lizards coming, and he went to get help, but they had already put him in sort of like a force field. It's like a bubble, but it was a force field that he couldn't get out of. Like, it's like when a mime is stuck in a box, you know, and the mime is like, let me out. It's like that situation. They just locked him in. And I asked if he was okay, and he's like, yeah, I'm dead. I'm like, of course I'm fine. They can't hurt me. He goes, but he was extremely upset over the fact that he couldn't do anything. He had to watch you get beat up by these 2 lizards, and he was extremely upset about the fact that he basically was helpless in that moment. So that's why I woke up with I was not dreaming. They literally did come in and bonk me on the head a few times. And then they ran off because they're a bunch of chicken shits. They knew what was coming if my team had showed up as support and backup. So and I asked, was it retaliation for that clearing we did when we cleared the facility? And they said, yep, you took a lot of food away from them. But also keep in mind that there's something that's really upset. It's like somebody's kicked the hornet nest. And they said that lizards are actually more desperate than ever, that they're actually working with more demonics, they're working with more grays. And they're, you know, it's kind of like this desperation. They used to be very territorial and they didn't want to share food, but now they realize that if they don't work together, they're going to lose the battle even faster. So they don't play by the rules. They kind of make up their own rules as they go. They do whatever they please and they fight dirty. So it reminded me kind of like a blanket party where they just came in and stopped me and then left again. So I was feeling very sore yesterday. I'm feeling fine today. I'm feeling great. And I sat down with Ella to do clearings about an hour ago. And I was like, how are you feeling? And she's like, oh, I feel great. I said, well, it was worth it then. And she's like, oh, yeah, 100% it was worth it. Like, you know, and it's funny because I had to laugh with Fergus. I was like, at least they can't eat me. At least. Maybe this is also what's kind of pissing them off. They used to be able to eat us and they can't. So they can only come in and beat up our astral form. They can't, like, you know, it's like they're behind a veil. It's like, haha, you can smell it, but you can't eat it. Can't touch this. Like, go ahead, you can beat up my astral form all you want. I'm going to feel fine within a couple days. And then whatever I did, obviously it pissed you off. So it was fucking worth it. I'm going to give myself a little pat on the back. So no regrets whatsoever. In fact, I'm feeling quite empowered to do more. So it was an exciting, you know, trip that I've been on, and I've been really looking forward to catching up with you guys. But like I said, I feel like the shift is ramping up and it's getting more exciting. And since we're on the front lines, I feel that I feel more empowered. I do feel like things are going to get more exciting and more, I mean, they're acting this desperate. And we're finding a lot more students. They're doing a lot of training when it comes to younger reptilians. Think of it kind of like a ride along. You get out of boot camp and then you got to ride along with the cops to see how they conduct calls and things like that. We're finding a lot. In fact, it was funny. I was asking Zach, I said, how many reptilians did you find in the home? And he goes, 2.5. I was like, are we calling the rookies a half of a lizard? And I was like, yeah. 2.5. I wouldn't call them a whole lizard. They're working their way up. And they're very timid. They try to hide. We found one hiding in a closet last night, of all places. The guides are like, whoop, oh, hello. I'm like, good thing you guys are thorough. And the other day we found another connection too. We actually did also clear some lizard nests. In fact, there was one individual. I found a case, and I don't know how to explain this to you guys because I'm still learning this myself. There was one individual that I did a clearing on the other day. This individual did not have any soul guides. And when I say did not have any soul guides, I mean there were no guides at all appointed to her in this lifetime period. So this was another case that I had that really kind of got to me a little bit. And I said, how could you be born without soul guides? And they said she hasn't crossed over this is her 5th incarnation. That she has died, gone somewhere else, and then was incarnated again without crossing over. And I said, wait a second, you mean to tell me kind of like the whole false light thing? And they said, well, it's different. They don't even see a light. If you die in a certain way where you were traumatized, and this one individual was burned at the stake, and when you say things like, I will do anything to get out of this, they can make a dark contract. And they actually prevented this person from crossing over. So on that moment, when they're burning alive as a witch, a lizard stepped in, made a dark contract, and prevented her from being able to cross over properly. They hijacked her reincarnation cycle. Exactly. So I sat down the other day with Zen to talk about this a little bit more because I wanted to know, how do they hack a reincarnation cycle? And they said, well, instead of going to the actual light, you go to what we would consider to be a purgatory or like a limbo situation. And the entities have a place that they can take you where they confuse you and make you think that you've crossed over when you haven't. And I said, okay, well, can we get into that place? And they said, no, going in there would be very difficult for one of the guides. It's so dark. They have their own dimension that you might even consider to be like a hell realm. And when they drag a soul into that, the only way to get out is with a dark contract. And they put a sigil on you as well. A sigil is like an energetic brand, like a stamp on your soul. And when you die, when you're dying and you're going into this place, they brand you, they mark you, they find a way to prevent you from going to the light. And then they plan your next life for you. And they hack your whole plan. And then they appoint false guides to you. So you have basically 2 little devils sitting on your shoulder that whole incarnation. And they plan suffering for you. They plan all kinds of just horrible experiences for you. And then you die again, and they have the sigil on you so they know where you are, and they control your plan again. And the repeating cycle occurs. And so when we found this one particular client, she had been through this 5 times. And they were actually using her as a puppet to mess with other people. And she didn't even know any of this. She's completely innocent in all this. In fact, the guides were expressing she's a really good person. And they said that, despite everything she's been through and all the control she's had and all the times they've stopped her from going to the healing place and reconnecting with her family and all this. And I also said, how often does this happen? I'm just curious, like percentage wise. And the guides didn't really want to give me a percentage, but they explained that it's not as rare as we would think. That you skip the healing place, that you skip the planning stages, that you skip going up to the higher vibrations and connecting with your soul family. And you're just on this repetitive cycle of earth reincarnation and suffering. And I got very emotional. I got very upset hearing this. And we cleared all the dark contracts. There were tons of them. We cleared all of the sigils that they had. They had branded her. And then we traced it to a hub. Then we cleared 3 nests. So that might be another thing they were pissed off about. We got a lot of lizards on that clearing. And part of the reason why I wanted to talk about this is because there are people out there who are convincing people that if you go to the light, that, you know, you will go through this period of suffering because it's a trick. They say it's a trick. This is, I mean, David Icke has said it. Alex Collier has said it. So, you know, it's one of those things where people, when they hear something about this and they learn something about it and they run with it, it is true that it's been happening, but it's not as big of a prevalent issue as you would think. It's not everybody. And the light that they trick you with, you're not going to see a false light unless you have a dark contract. So I'm not trying to scare people, obviously, but I am trying to educate people to the point where if you avoid the light, if you are scared to cross over, this is where they can get you. If you have a strong trust in your team, if you have worked on your confidence, if you have, you know, really, when you are ready to die, if you've come to terms with it and you're okay with it and you're looking forward to seeing your family, you're not going to see the false light. And it's very difficult to discern without being tricked. When you have dark contracts and other heavy attachments that are holding you back. But if you're somebody who is, you know, self-empowered, working on their self-love and ready to go, you're far less likely to end up in one of these places. And I'm still learning. In fact, I'm planning on having this discussion with Zen if you guys are interested next week. Zen will be coming on with Ella, and I planned on, you know, answering some questions through him in how we have that discernment. Because I don't want to say that Alex and David and all these other people who are pushing these ideas are wrong. If they're telling everybody that this is the only thing that happens, then yes, they are wrong. If they're telling people that this is a potential thing that could happen, if you aren't really paying attention, if you don't really know what you're doing, and if you've got a very difficult, painful life, then yes, it could end up being a thing. How much is it is an issue? I think they said 10% of the time this could happen. So I started asking other questions. I was like, so how, well, normally when you cross over to the light, you go through the healing place, you go to the life review, you plan your next incarnation. In fact, the other day, I noticed that my dad hasn't been around in a while, and I was like, Papa, where you been? And I called him in and I asked him, I said, where have you been? I haven't felt your energy in a while. And he goes, I've been very busy. And I said, what have you been doing? And he goes, I'm in university. I was like an astral, like heavenly university? He's like, yeah. And I said, okay, well, what are you studying? He's like, I can't tell you. And I was like, fine. Like, of course you can't, you know? And he was explaining, I said, well, are you planning your next incarnation? And he goes, oh, no, not right now. He says, I will at some point. And he goes, but it takes a very long time to plan your next life. And I said, really? Do tell. Like, I want to know. And they explained that, yeah, every person that you're going to have a relationship with, every person that you, I mean, you have to choose your parents, you have to choose your children, you have to choose your lovers, you have to choose your spouse, you have to choose your plan and moving forward. You have to work on the karma that you're going to clear. You have to work on soul contracts. You have to work on healing. There's many different aspects. And they said that planning a life from scratch takes a very long time. If you want to live the same life over again, I mean, you could go right back in. If you want the same life with the same people and the same experiences and you want a complete do-over, then you can do that. So he wanted to explain about how, you know, he's just planning his next life and all of this, but he's not in a rush. And I thought that was interesting. So they explained that, you know, planning your next life takes a really long time. So I had the thought while I'm chatting with Zen, I said, okay, well, if you are taken to one of these false light places and you're taken to, and I saw it in my head as kind of like the waiting room in Beetlejuice. That's how I saw it. Like a bunch of earthbounds sitting around waiting. And that some of them even had like visible injuries to them. So that's why I say very much like the Beetlejuice scene where they're just kind of stuck in a waiting room with a line, you know, freaking super long. And that's kind of how I was perceiving it. So I thought, okay, well, what about how do they end up incarnated again? And they said through a dark contract through the mother, through the parents. So if the parents have a dark contract, it allows them to bring a child in through the dark contract. They don't need consent from the soul itself, from the parents. Because when you choose to incarnate and you plan your life, your future life, you can, decide who your parents are going to be and all of that. But if you've gone through this false light and you're not able to choose your parents, I was like, then how do you end up with your parents? And they said dark contracts. Do you end up, they have a dark contract and they lose their free will when they lost a dark contract. So the beastie is just basically like, all right, you're having this kid. This one's going to be yours. So it's the beasties that do all the planning stages, that choose your parents, that choose. And I was like, oh my God, this makes so much sense. I was like, so sometimes they don't even have karma with these parents that are, going through stuff. And they said, no, sometimes they don't even know each other. The beastie is just like, all right, you go here, you go there. And I was like, wow, that would explain why there's even some cases where there's like heavy resentment from the parents, like they didn't choose this. And then sometimes we, as many of you know, going through the hypnosis aspects, we try and figure out why we are born to these certain parents. Like, is there karma with this person that I'm working out? Is there some kind of lesson from self-empowerment or self-love that I'm learning through this person? Do I still have to work on alcohol abuse? And that's why I choose 2 alcoholic parents. We try and quantify why we end up in certain situations. And we have found that people who are, and I'm not talking about the average individual, these are people who feel like they're born cursed. These are people who have been struggling their whole lives and nothing gets better. Why? Well, because they don't even have soul guides. So, and I asked about it. I said, how is this okay? Like, this really doesn't seem fair. And the guides were like, oh, fair doesn't exist. Fairness is not really a thing. And I said, well, how come Source is okay with this? And they said, well, Source is still helping to a degree. Why do you think this woman ended up here for a clearing? She's never had soul guides, and yet she still ended up here booking a clearing with you and getting all of this released. Why did that happen? Because the higher self is still connected. There's still a connection to Source, even through all the heavy darkness, through the many incarnations. They still have a connection to Source, and it is Source that was looking out. It was the higher self that was getting her as kind of like this navigation system back to where she could be cleared and healed. And there are many people who are finding us in this degree recently, and this is why I'm bringing it up. This is not a rare occurrence that we are finding people that have been incarnated without crossing over properly. So as much as it was upsetting to me, because if you think about it, right, if somebody like, David Icke goes around telling everybody to avoid the light, then the people who are believing him and trusting that are scared to cross over. And what happens when you cross over? The beasties, you become untouchable. You become completely untouchable. And they can't mess with you once you've crossed over. They lose access to you. All they can do is throw you in a jar, right, Fergus? There's not really much else they can do once you've crossed over. So when you cross over, they lose access. And that's the one thing they don't want more than anything else. So I have to come to terms with the fact that, yeah, to a degree, David and Alex and a few other people are right about the fact that some people are tricked into going to the wrong place. 10%, give or take, are being tricked in that regard. But when you're telling everybody to avoid the light, you're tricking everybody who believes you into not crossing over, and they're still stuck as earthbounds. So it's the discernment that we need to teach. It's the recognizing when they're trying to trick us aspect that we need to focus on. And you can't paint every situation with the same brush because, yeah, there's a lot of differences that we need to recognize. And I don't want them to be spreading false information and scaring people away from this. So you know what's funny? I actually have a phone call with Alex Collier next week. I booked a call with Alex. So I'm going to sit Alex down and have a conversation and see where he got his information from and have a chat with him about all this. So that'll be fun. I'll let you guys know next week how that call went. Because I plan on asking Alex these questions and about discovering this discernment. And I have had a conversation with a couple different guides about this, and I've learned a little bit about it. So, but I'm very curious as to how he got the information that he claims that everybody who goes to the light will end up tricked. I think that their information has been tarnished to a degree because, like I said, if you tell people not to cross over, you're leaving them in a realm where they're being attacked. So they tell me that it will be a phone call. He has my phone number. He's straight up just going to call me. I paid $100 for Alex Collier to call me. So I think he's going to be a little surprised by the subject matter. I think that he's going to remember this phone call for a while. He has no idea. I will be checking just to make sure. I will not. I'm very cautious in that regard. So he's going to get a clearing before the call. You know me, I have no qualms. I will literally tell him what I have learned and see how he handles it. I do believe that there has been some sort of I don't know if it's an imposter, so to speak, or maybe there was just a mistranslation in some of the information. Because like I said, I do believe that he is right to a degree, but he doesn't realize that it's not for 100%. It's only 10% of the people. So it'll be interesting to see how he handles my things that I want to talk to him about. It'd be funny if he just hangs up on me. I guess we'll see. Yeah, I don't talk to people who are uncleared. I don't even talk to my own mother if she hasn't been cleared first. Are you sure you're sovereign? I'll call you back. So I'm excited to learn more about this, and we can have this discussion next week with Zen, because yes, I am, as you know me, I would love to learn about all the ins and outs and all the little pitfalls that can happen when it comes to reincarnation and how beasties mess with us. And I'm probably going to put this all into a book someday. I do find it fascinating. And I think that, Dolores and Michael Newton and a few others, I think they had a glimpse into these things, but I don't think they wanted to look this deep down the rabbit hole. And I'm not scared to look. And I would like to know all of the ins and outs and all the ways that they can kind of trick us. I noticed that somebody asked earlier about Daffy. Hang on one sec. I think there was another question. Did you have a particular question, or did you just want an update about her? So I'm just looking, catching up again. So Daffy Michelle, I'm hoping I'm saying her name right. She's from Haiti. There was a young lady who last year, I believe it was, in September, was picked up by police because she was having an episode. This young lady was yelling at people that nobody could see. And so rather than calling somebody to take, because we don't really have good mental health facilities in this country at all, and the fact that she wasn't speaking English made it even more challenging for her to get proper care. And so police just arrested her. And I believe it was ICE that took her. I'm not sure, but she was locked up from September until March. And when they let her out of jail, it was ICE that let her out. They did not contact the family. They put an ankle monitor on her, and they dropped her off in the middle of a city, and they left her there. It was 22 degrees that night. She could not speak English. Her phone had been turned off because she had been in jail for so long against her will. She didn't do anything wrong. She just had a mental health episode. And she froze to death. And I 100% believe that it was murder. And they've done this to Native Americans many times, where they'll pick up a drunken person on the side of the road in one of the one of the areas that they tend to frequently harass people, and they'll take you out to an area without a jacket and they drop you off until you freeze to death. They just leave you out in the middle of nowhere. They do that all the time. It's not a rare occurrence. In fact, police pick people up and drop them off in the middle of nowhere without adequate clothing all the time. I've heard of this story probably 10 times. So it's an easy way to dispose of people. It really is. And there's almost no comeuppance, because they can just be like, we released her. We dropped her off. It's not our fault that she didn't have a jacket. It's not our fault that, that she couldn't communicate with people. So it was murder. And like I said, Daffy froze to death, and she was very upset. And so when I saw her face, I got really emotional. So we did a pro bono clearing. I asked, thank you, Ella, for doing this, but I asked Ella if we could do it. She says, absolutely. And Zen helped me locate her. Thanks to her obituary, which is very helpful, we were able to find her date of birth and location and the date of death. And so we tuned in and we found her wandering the streets. She didn't know she was dead. She was very emotional, very upset. She was trying to talk to people. They either couldn't hear her because, the living obviously isn't going to hear her, and the other earthbounds around her couldn't understand her. So nobody was helping her. Nobody was explaining to her what was happening, and she was just wandering the streets, very emotional, very upset. So when we tuned in, we are kind of like an astral SWAT. We pop in and there's just like a whole bunch of 7-foot tall glowing people around. She was a bit like, wow, at first. We called her grandmother forward. We asked the guides, I said, can you please find a loved one? And there was a grandmother in spirit that was able to come and get her. And her grandmother came over. She was very happy and relieved to see her grandmother. She finally had somebody she could talk to and communicate with, and her grandmother explained what had happened. We did a full clearing on her, and she crossed over with her grandmother. So yes, for those of you who don't really understand how this works, especially when it comes to being earthbound, people say, well, why didn't she have family and support helping? She's locked into the 3D physical. Whenever you die, especially when you die in your sleep, she died of hypothermia, so she just went to sleep and died in her sleep. And when that happens, even if it's, when you're really tired and you fall asleep and you die in your sleep, that can lead to the confusion. You can also end up, I said a lot of people get killed in their sleep, or they die from overdoses in their sleep. That can also be a determining factor adds to the confusion. So when you are locked into the 3D physical still, because you don't know that you're dead, it's very difficult to perceive your soul guides, your loved ones. In fact, you probably won't even see the portal of light opening. So this adds to the layers of confusion. She also had a whole bunch of entities on her when she passed away. There was a demonic and a reptilian. I saw them as soon as we tuned into her. They were gone by the time we got there, but there were still cords. And so we traced those cords and caught the 2 bastards that were responsible. So yes, there was an influence of entities that made it more difficult for her to cross over. They give you layers of confusion. We call them overlays. So think of it kind of like an illusion, right? They can put illusions on you or in front of you, and it makes it even more difficult for you to perceive that something is like that has happened. So this is why she was a bit confused. She didn't know she was deceased. And like I said, it does make it more challenging to recognize when you've passed away if you have all of these overlays. So that's one of the first things that we remove after we take the entities away. And this is part of, like I said, there's so many different aspects of death that most people don't even really know about. The death loops are another factor. For those of you who know the video game concept of death loops, it's when you have like an auto save issue where you're playing a game and then you save, and then right after you save, you die. Like split second, right after you save the game. So then you go back to your last save, and then it's like, let's say that you saved the game, but as you're falling off a cliff, right? So you reload, you know, and you're like, shit, okay, reload. Like, it's like that. So it's the moment of your death over and over and over and over again, endlessly, until that glitch is broken. And people wonder why this happens, because it's a 3D matrix glitch. It's not supposed to happen. It's not something that would naturally be happening unless we, you know, like I said, we have this artificial 3D matrix that's been superimposed over the 5D matrix. And this is what creates a lot of the confusion and the glitches that shouldn't even be happening. So I asked the guides, is this a factor that we'll be contending with after the shift? And they said, no, this only happens in 3D. And that's because the 3D matrix is not a natural, it's artificial matrix that's been superimposed over the source-based matrix. So it makes it a lot more challenging to kind of discern things. And that's another reason why the entities have these low vibrational realms that they can pull souls into. If anybody has seen the movie What Dreams May Come, anybody know the movie What Dreams May Come? It's one of my favorite movies. It's a bit sad. And there are some parts that, you know, are probably going to stick with you for a while, considering how emotional they are. But if you have seen it and you remember that, you know, his wife takes her own life, and where she goes when she takes her own life, it is very much like that, the realm that they have created. So the guide said that they can't really go in there and pull somebody out. They said that if they can get to you while you're incarnated or before that you've gotten pulled into there, then they can help you. They can't, if you're in there, they can't really pull you out. And hearing that left me a little bit upset, because it basically is saying that Robin Williams wouldn't have been able to go in there and pull his wife out. And that, I mean, if you know, that's the one most beautiful part in the whole movie. And I hate to spoil, I'm not trying to spoil the movie, but I mean, it has been out for like 25 years. So finding out that, you know, you can only really help them before they go in or after they've come out was a little bit jarring for me. And I asked how they get pulled into a realm like that. That was another word. I'm like, collected. And I said, yeah, they come and collect certain earthbounds that have sigils and dark contracts, and they pull them into there. And once they're pulled in, until they're reincarnated again, there's not much we can do about it. So, like I said, I'm learning all the ins and outs and certain things about reincarnation that I did not know about. In fact, for years, I said that David Icke was full of shit. I said he was full of shit about lizards too, until I actually saw one with my own eyes. I'm very stubborn. And when I'm talking about 9/11 and trying to raise awareness about all of that, and then somebody comes at me with lizards, I'm like, get out of here. I was not open-minded at all. Considering here I was a big warrior, like hunting them in a past life, you'd think I would have been more open-minded about them. But I was like, you mean to tell me they're space dinosaurs? I was not receptive to that information one bit. My own soul guides had to pull me out of body and show me a lizard straight to my face for me to believe it. So I already had to, you know, basically like issue a small apology to David online, being like, I'm sorry I was wrong. I'm sorry I didn't believe you. And then when I heard about all the false light stuff, and here I was studying Dolores's work, I thought, well, that's nonsense. I was wrong there too. I have no qualms about admitting when I'm wrong. But at the same time, they're also wrong, because it's not 100% of the time. And to convince people to avoid the light, they're actually leaving them vulnerable for entities. So if you cross over, and you cross over properly, you are untouchable by beasties. Virtually. Like I said, they can still put you in a jar. But other than that, you know, there's only so much they can do to mess with people that have already crossed over. So you can kind of be like, ha, to them once you've crossed over. But if you haven't and you're wandering around as an earthbound, there's all kinds of stuff that can happen to you. So this is the reason why I'm really delving into this and studying this and trying to figure out where the truth is and where the bullshit is. So Andrea says, how do you avoid the light then? See, this is part of the reason why I want to be very clear about this, because like I said, if you avoid the light, you end up stuck as an earthbound. The most important thing upon your death is that you cross over, period. Because otherwise you're going to end up, and that's just funny things that I've talked about with Fergus. I was like, well, I'm glad they couldn't hurt you. And last night he told me, he's like, they can't hurt me because I'm dead. Like, well, technically I am still living, but in a different way. And I said, well, is it really living when you're dead? And he goes, I'm only dead to you. I'm alive to everybody else over here. It's still a life. He's like, just because I'm not incarnated into a physical body doesn't mean that I'm not technically alive. In fact, he didn't like the concept of me calling him dead. He's like, I'm not dead. I'm talking to you right now. I just don't have a physical vessel anymore. I'm like, okay, that's a proper distinction to make then, because they're like, yeah, you go on living. You don't, if you think about it, what would death be considered then and then? Well, probably becoming a new person, choosing to incarnate again and choosing to become a new person. Even then, it's not death. Because you know what's interesting? We found somebody that has another version of themselves as one of their soul guides. I was like, really? And I said, yeah, you can actually have another version of you, a past version of yourself that can come in as one of your soul guides. So you end up a guide for yourself. And I was thinking to myself, okay, well, technically, aren't we all the same person? Kind of. We're all split from source, right? So are we talking like micro to macro kind of thing? Like, because if you think about it, we all start from source, we all begin from source, and then we have a split personality to a degree. We take that little spark of consciousness and split it. In fact, there was a great analogy that I learned from one of my shamans that I went to when I went to Peru to take Aya. I had a shaman explain it to me when we were talking about the oversoul or the higher self or source itself. They said, now imagine the biggest bonfire you've ever seen. The biggest, hugest bonfire, a bonfire so big, so vast, it has no beginning and no end. Just imagine this endless flame that never goes out. Now imagine a human life as a spark. You know, when you see an ember flying out of the bonfire, and you see this bright spark just flying through the air, it may seem like it's disconnected from the fire itself, right? I mean, that little split, that spark of consciousness has left that big bonfire and decided to take whatever route that may be. It's going to fly through the air. Perhaps it's going to land right on you. Perhaps it's going to go flying off into the darkness. But you know what I mean. When you have a big bonfire, you see sparks shooting off of it. That he explained that that's like a human incarnation. It's a spark of consciousness that, you know, temporarily leaves the whole in order to have its own experience. And when that, that spark may burn bright, but then it will go out just as quickly. And when it does, it goes back to the ashes from whence it came and goes back to the whole. And I always thought that was a beautiful analogy. So when they're explaining like these sparks of consciousness and how we choose to interact, we as a collective are that whole, you know, that whole bonfire of consciousness. That's what the collective is. But then whenever we choose to have an incarnation, we split. We choose to leave that spark of consciousness and develop that spark independently from the whole. Does that make sense? So as this is happening, usually it's through taking simple life forms. You know, you're going to be like cells or water molecules, things that are very small in nature. And then you work your way up to more and more complex vessels. And this is the whole thing of evolution. Soul evolution from beginning to end is just having experiences, one after the other after the other. So every time you incarnate, especially as a human, because our lives are so short, you are developing that consciousness more and more. And it takes time to develop that. It could take thousands of lives as a human to work your way up to the next level, so to speak. And as that happens, that spark of consciousness gets stronger and bigger and more, refined in what it likes, in how it feels, in its personality. If you've noticed, babies all have a personality to themselves. The minute they're born, you can start to sense personality from them. That's because they carry that with them. And as this soul evolution gets longer and more in depth, and as you start working your way up to more and more complex bodies, humans are kind of at the bottom of that soul evolution. Think of us kind of like as kindergartners in that respect. So you have more advanced souls who are kind of like in a Billy Madison situation where they've already kind of graduated, and yet they choose to come back to kindergarten to help the other kindergartners. So that is one of those situations where you're a starseed, for example, and you're coming in to help the other kindergartners get a better perspective on things and to help elevate the consciousness level. So as soul evolution goes, it depends on how old your soul is, but also the experience of it. And sometimes a more advanced version of you, it doesn't even have to be like a galactic version. It could even be a version of you as an earth seed who is just very highly advanced. And as they can, if they prefer, if they want to see some, some better progression, they can choose to come in and assist a less evolved version of themselves. So looking at it from an outer perspective, you do get the all-encompassing source. Then you get a split of that consciousness, which becomes the higher self. And then that splits again and again and again into all these different versions of you that exist. So yes, there can be a more advanced version of you that exists in another time or space or wherever that chooses to come in as one of your guides to help a less evolved version of themselves in another vessel. Does that make sense? I hope I'm explaining it well. So this is why on very rare occasions, you can be your own soul guide to that degree. Most of the time, it's somebody else. So instead of having, we have source, which is everybody. Then we have the larger spark, which becomes the higher self, which is always connected to source. And then we have different versions of ourselves that are, all over the place, pretty much thousands or hundreds of thousands of incarnations, right? And they're all happening simultaneously. So this is why with hypnosis, we can actually tune into other versions of you that are happening right now. If I hypnotize you and you go into the past life of, I don't know, when you were, a merchant sailor somewhere, I will see you on the boat. I'll be able to have a conversation with you through the subconscious because that version of you is still existing somewhere in another timeline, another reality. So sometimes, on rare occasions, it is another version of you that comes to look after and assist you. And we've even found walk-ins. Let's say a lesser version of you or a less advanced version of you is really struggling and is planning on giving up. They're ready to quit. They're like, nope, I'm gone. They're like, I'm done. I'm tired. I give up. And when you're giving up because you don't want to be here anymore and you're really serious about quitting or even thinking of self-harm, we have noticed that on occasion, a more advanced version will step in and replace the lesser version, the less evolved version, I should say. So the less evolved version leaves and the more evolved version steps in to complete the tasks that are being asked in that incarnation. So we can even have walk-ins that are a higher version of yourself that come in, which is pretty cool if you think about it. But it is quite rare. Most of the time when you have a soul guide, it's not the same higher self. It's not you in another form, technically, unless you go up to the source aspect of it. You have to go really up the rung to understand that. Most of the time, like Fergus and I, for example, we don't have the same higher self. This is the concept of twin flames that people don't really understand, and why the whole twin flame aspect gets very, very confusing, because there's so many people out there that start pimping other ideas when it comes to, you know, twin flames. Anybody that tells you that your twin flame version of you is running away and it's a toxic relationship, and you know, you've got all of these dynamics of one is trying to hold on to the relationship, and the other version is like, no, that is all bullshit. All of that, where they tell you that it's almost like a narcissist and an empath kind of pairing together, and they try and justify it by saying it's a twin flame relationship. All of that is bullshit. That's not true. But the guides have said that, yes, in a situation like this, you could consider that to be a twin flame. How does that end up a twin flame? Going back to the whole bonfire aspect, you have the same higher self. Everybody has the same connection to source, but not everybody has the same split and the same higher self. So if it's two versions of that higher self incarnated in the same time and space, then yes, you could consider that a twin flame relationship, because you have the same higher self with that person. What is the most common influence of this happening? With twins. That's not to say that all twins are like that. For example, Izzy is a twin. Her and her sister are not identical in that regard. They come from a different spark. They have a different higher self. Some twins out there have the same higher self, and they chose to incarnate at the same time. Why? Because they could. On occasion, you do find higher self that has decided to split into two partners, but the guides have said that on rare occasions when that happens, it's one of those relationships like you meet when you're children and you die together as really old couple. Like you're together like 60 years. You know, you spend most of your lives connected like that. That is a true twin flame relationship. So on rare occasions, twins can have the same higher self, and they're the most likely twin flames that you will find. But like I said, it's not to say that all twins do this, because people who have even an identical twin can have two separate higher selves. Why? Well, it could be your best friend. It could have been your sister in a past life, and you really wanted to be extra sisters this time. It could be that you have some really heavy karma that you're working out, and they really wanted to make sure that you're like, you know, handcuffed to each other in this life. There are lots of reasons as to why somebody would choose to be a twin. Even though sometimes, if you guys remember the baseball players, forget their names, there are two men that met each other that are identical. They're strangers, and yet they're virtually identical. Not only are they identical in appearance, they have the same name, the same birthday, and the same sport. They have the same career. They're both professional baseball players. I forget their names. One of you might know who I'm talking about. And they wanted to study these two people because they're like, this is crazy. You have the same name. It was a very, generic name, like, I don't know, Bob Campbell or something. Can't remember what their names were. But they basically were like, okay, we need to study this. So they went and DNA tested them to make sure that they weren't related, that one of them wasn't like, stolen at birth or something. So they checked. Nope, completely different genetically. They weren't even related. So a while ago, this was like a year ago, out of my own curiosity, I showed, I think it was Zach or Chen, I explained this to, and I was like, how did this happen? And they said, okay, well, let us look in the record. I was like, okay. And they're like, Source did it. I was like, what do you mean Source did it? Can you elaborate? And they're like, yeah, Source did it. Source decided, okay, well, I'm going to manifest two people. We're going to make them virtually identical. We're going to give them very similar personalities and backgrounds and all of that and interests. And then we're going to make sure they meet. And I was like, okay, well, what's the purpose of this? And they said, well, Source just wanted this experience. Source just basically said, okay, I want to create this and show people that there's more funny business that happens that scientists are not going to be able to explain. We always try to find a quantifiable explanation for things, right? And if Source is able to pull strings like that to make it happen, it starts to make people scratch their heads. They're like, how did this happen? Well, it was one of those. They just wanted to have that experience. The source wanted to be able to raise awareness about the fact that consciousness can choose whatever form and background it wishes. So obviously they were meant to meet in this incarnation. Exactly. As he says, copy, paste, change font. Yes, exactly. So Sarah says, is that the feeling of being home? Is that it's a great idea? Split higher self. Well, the higher self can have experiences in whatever way it chooses. And I do find it fascinating that we can choose our appearance despite, our genetics. You get kind of like a certain, you can't really go too widely outside the genetics that are available to you, but you do choose a lot of things about yourself. You choose your hair color, your eye color, your height, your weight, your perception of things. Sometimes there's certain aspects that are controlled by environmental factors or diet and other things. But for the most part, your avatar, the way you designed it, is exactly how you wanted it to be. You chose your body. And it makes me laugh when people complain about their own choices. I mean, if you think about it, it's kind of like, and I've used this analogy before, it's kind of like when you go to a car shop and you say, I want this car. I want this car exactly with these specifications. I want it with this kind of, seats. I want this kind of this and this and this. And you design your car. They make it exactly to your specifications. You have to wait a long time, right? If you want a special order car too, you also have to wait for it because it's not like you can just be like, that one, right? You have to actually plan these things and work out all the logistics of this. And you wait a long time for that perfect moment to be born, or to say to receive that car. And then you receive the car and you're so happy about it at first. Until, you're not taking good care of it and you end up banging it around and you end up, not changing the oil enough. And you run that car ragged, and after a while, you're like, man, this car doesn't drive like it used to. And you start getting pissed off at the car. And then you get pissed off at the makers who made the car for you exactly how you wanted it. And you start blaming them. How many times people are like, well, I got a faulty vessel. I was born with this broken thing. God gave me a lemon kind of vibe. But really, it's because we lack self-care. We run ourselves ragged. We exhaust ourselves. Any car that you get, it doesn't matter if it's a sports car that was designed to go fast. If you're running that thing ragged, not taking good care of it, yeah, the car is going to fall apart. It's not going to last as long as it should have. So instead of going back to the manufacturer and complaining and being like, you sold me a lemon, we have to ask ourselves, what ways can I start taking better care? How can I remodel things a little bit so it'll last longer? So this is why taking care of yourself is a very important aspect. It's not just about, getting enough sleep and eating good and keeping, your body hydrated. It's more in regards to how you think about yourself and the way you speak to yourself. Kenzie says, I've been doing the celery juice. Well done, Kenzie. Yes, the guide said that if you really want to start working on cleaning the pipes, so to speak, they said drink as much homemade organic celery juice as you can. And I was like, no, thank you. No, thank you. Why does it have to be celery juice? Really? Source couldn't have come up with something that tastes better. But yes, they say that out of all the things that you could juice, celery juice, organic celery juice is one of the best. I guess it tastes better than oregano oil, so you got to count your blessings. Speaking of which, on Monday, I am starting a parasite cleanse, a juicing fast. I'm going to do a detox. I've been gallivanting this summer and I've been not taking care of my car as well as I should have. Sarah says, why not strawberry juice? I don't know. It would be nice, hey? So Jessa says, how does celery juice help the body? They explain that it's got all the nutrients and vitamins that are in particular good for helping to flush the body and to revitalize the blood. They said blood is the biggest factor that we don't think about. In fact, the cabal knows this, which is one of the reasons people are always like, oh, maybe that, I don't want to say the word of it. It starts with an A, that they can harvest from people. I'm sure you guys know what I'm talking about. That stuff that comes from the adrenal gland, that is a party drug to them. That's not how they stay young. That's a party drug. Anybody who's ever seen Fear and Loathing, you know what I'm talking about. That is a real thing. And they do take it, and that, like, for them, that gives them, that's not what keeps them young. That's a common misconception. No, it's just a party drug for them. What keeps them young is the blood transfusions. Young blood, literally. Because, exactly, the chlorophyll is really important. That's what cleanses the blood. And there's something about celery juice that helps to cleanse the blood as well, and that's part of what keeps you young. And helps to clean all the stuff that has been accumulating in your blood when it comes to, I mean, there's all kinds of stuff in there that shouldn't be there because of the foods that we eat and the microplastics that get into our body, they leach chemicals, and all of that shit goes into our blood and our organs. So this is why those in the cabal like to eat organic, and they are very particular about what foods they eat. They would never eat cheap processed foods. They avoid sugar. They avoid alcohol to a degree. They know the certain things will clog the pipes and start to do premature aging. So, yep, this is one of those secrets they don't want you knowing about. And this is why they're so obsessed with all this blood type stuff and all of that, because, yeah, this is how they stay young. For those of you who have seen the movie Jupiter Ascending and also Avatar, they go into this, that in both situations, that is real. It is a very real concept. It's just not as they would depict it in the movies. Yes, and chlorophyll also pulls out heavy metals. They say kimchi does too. Kimchi. I forget how and why kimchi does. Scientists discovered that kimchi pulls all this shit out of your blood as well. So drink celery juice and eat kimchi. Yes, and I do a parasite cleanse. I thank you very much for promoting Hans. I get mine from Hans the herbalist. Hans is amazing. If you see the name up there, Sonnengarten Organics, I've been using Hans's parasite cleanse for the last 2 years, and I wouldn't want to use any other. His works extremely well. So if you're interested in getting a parasite cleanse, that's the name, Sonnengarten Organics. He's amazing. I'm not getting paid in any way, just for the record. I'm not an affiliate with him, but like I said, his stuff works extremely well. Yes, you might have to make your own capsules because it is very strong tasting. It is not, you know, it's funny. All the really important things for us do not taste good. So if you are interested, like I said, you know, many of us have been eating naughty over the summer and haven't been really keeping up with our parasite cleanses and our fasting. And I'm in the same boat. I've been spoiling myself. Although to a degree, you know what's funny? I felt amazing when I was eating European food. I had no problem whatsoever. As soon as I come back and I go camping and we're, you know, eating bread that came from a normal bakery here in the US, the same problems that I had before I went to Europe came back. So there's a lot of chemicals and nastiness that they hide in our food that isn't supposed to be there. And you can really tell the difference when you leave and go abroad and between what you can eat there versus here. Angela says, I use him and I love the free little gifts too. Yes, Hans sends a lot of little gifts. Last time I got a gift from him, I think it was Shilajit. He sent me Siberian ginseng with Shilajit as a gift last time. He usually sends gifts though. He also sent me a moringa as well. So, see, there's his little name up there. Up the top. So he does. He sends little gifts all the time. He's just lovely. This one is, as I said, I'm not joking. I get a lot of things from him. This one is noni. See, noni and moringa. So yes, I highly recommend checking out Hans. He's lovely. How does a person with a bowel disease can do a parasite cleanse? I'm not entirely sure. Like, keep in mind, I am not a doctor. I am just telling you guys what I do for myself. I would do some research on these things and just looking into, you know, the ingredients. And if you're not sure, you could always do muscle testing. Muscle testing is when you ask your body for if something is beneficial or not, and your body will have a certain reaction. So just Google muscle testing. You can search it on YouTube. And it explains a lot about how the body responds, and it will tell you whether or not something is good or bad for you. Somebody asked about methylene blue. Ironically, I have some. I'm not sure. People are telling me that it's a good thing. Somebody gave this to me as a gift, so I do have some. I don't trust it. I don't trust it. This bottle is untouched. I don't trust it yet. I have not really looked into it that much. For those of you who don't know what methylene blue is, that is literally the color. I mean, yeah, it is the craziest blue you've ever seen. I don't trust it because I don't know enough about it. So as somebody, like I said, somebody gave it to me as a gift to try, and I don't know. I haven't asked the guides about it. It is synthetic, and that's part of the reason why I'm like, So nope, I haven't touched it. I know of it, as you can see. But I have trust issues when it comes to certain things. So lots of people swear by it and others do not. Muscle testing is wonderful, but please ask an herbalist before starting anything if you already have a condition. Yes, well said. Absolutely. Everything like this should be taken with caution. You have to do your research because some people respond very differently to these things. So you really have to have strong discernment when it comes to your body. And also sometimes the things that you're already eating, sometimes it's not adding something to your diet, it's subtracting it. So sometimes the foods you're already eating are causing a reaction, and then you go looking for something to kind of get rid of the reaction, and then you realize that it's actually your diet that's the factor. Laura says, I'm drinking it right now. Mitochondrial stimulator, effects to be determined. Well, this is the thing. You never really know if something is going to benefit you until you do some research in it. You see how you might have some interactions with what you're already taking. And when it comes to trial and error, sometimes it is a factor. Some people, you know, try something in a small amount and realize that it's not for them. So, like I said, this is I have not touched this yet. I have trust issues. And even though in many other lifetimes I was into herbalism, I am very concerned about the kind of stuff that they're peddling these days because you really have to be careful. You never know what is certain ingredients are in certain things. Michelle says, but what food we shouldn't eat hurt our souls overall? I would say the most damaging thing that you could eat is the processed foods. Hands down, it's the heavily processed foods. If it comes in a bag or a box, if it's not something, if it has multiple ingredients in it, for example, bread should have 4 ingredients. Bread, especially if it's sourdough, you know, you're not using 15 to 20 ingredients. Just one bun at McDonald's has over like 70 ingredients. So there's a lot of synthetic stuff. In fact, you know, back in the Victorian era, when things started really getting into like the industrial age, and they were allowing food to be mass produced in factories, people were dying left and right. They were dropping like flies. And then they started to figure out why. Well, first of all, there were no regulations for food safety whatsoever in the beginning. In fact, there was one place I was reading about that was a bread factory. One of the biggest bread factories in the Victorian era was caught adding sawdust and other shit to their bread just because they could. Literal sawdust was being added. And they got away with it for years. They were getting away with putting all kinds of toxic shit in the food, and people were dying from it. And they didn't understand how it was happening. In fact, did you know even ice cream was a killer back in the day? Hundreds of children died from ice cream. Why? Cross-contamination. In fact, when they were originally giving out ice cream, they would give it to you in a little bowl without a spoon, and you would lick out the bowl, and then you would give the bowl back to the ice cream person, and then the ice cream person would be like, oh, thanks, and they'd put it back in a bucket, and then they would reuse it without washing it. So if there was an illness going around in the area, everybody would pick it up. Yes, penny licks, they were called. Yep. And the funny thing is, exactly, Kenzie, they're still putting sawdust in food today. They are. They get away with it. They call it cellulose and other things. They don't put the actual word sawdust. They'll call it cellulose. It still goes into bread. In fact, we were talking about, like yoga mat material going into Subway bread. Yes. I mean, honestly, it still happens to this day. They're getting away with it to this day. Why? Because nobody pays that much attention, especially here in the US. And not only that, but people are a bit ridiculous. There was one company, I forget who it was. Oh, that's right. It was Skittles, that said that they were going to do away with some of the artificial stuff that was not healthy in the food. Well, not because they wanted to, but because they're being forced to do so. Robert Kennedy was like, come on, you're going to get rid of this and this. And if you're selling it in Europe without the chemicals, why do you have to put it in American food? So Robert Kennedy was basically like arguing, if you can give them a cleaner, healthier version, you can give us the same. So they said, well, we'll take out some of the bad ingredients. And I read an article about it, and I went into the discussions underneath it, and people were pissed off. They're like, don't you change my Skittles. They're like, we don't want Skittles to taste different. People are a bit ridiculous. They're like, I want my poison. If it's going to taste different, I don't want I don't want a healthier version. Yeah, it could have been NPCs and bots in the chat. Who knows? But the point is that people still, change bothers them. And even if it's a better change, they're often, rejecting it because they are very fussy about things like that. And it's isn't it weird that some people are even protecting the poison? Very strange that people are like, no, leave all the crap in there. So it does make you wonder how things are going to be changing in future if we're going to get all these poisons out of our food. So, any other questions today, since I'm done with my big rant for the day? We still have 200 people hanging out with us. Nice to have you guys with us. Like I mentioned before, I will be going back to my regular routine now that Aiden is starting school on Tuesday. So I will have regular podcasts on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. I will be bringing guests on Wednesdays. Next Wednesday, we will be having Ella, my newest certified SRT medium, coming on, and you'll be able to hopefully meet with Zen as well. Zen will explain a little bit about who he is. I'm not sure if we still have anybody on. I don't think we do. So if you guys watch Wednesday, we will definitely be able to get a clearing for the whole group on Wednesday. So if you can join us live on Wednesday, you will be able to receive a clearing. I don't think we're going to do one today because I don't think any of my mediums are watching at the moment. Everybody's been very busy since we got back. So Brian says, are you as powerful as your guides? I feel like your team is stacked. I do. Thank you, Brian. I do have a very strong team with me. Most of my guides are discarnate. I have a funny thing. Like most people who are veterans don't have a whole lot of discarnate guides. I do. In fact, most of my guides are Scottish, funnily enough. So it's more of a matching personality and frequency. So you do end up getting more advanced guides as you start getting more advanced. And when I need this SRT team of my own, that is when I will receive one, but not until then. If you can't hear the guides that you already have, there's no point in getting you an SRT guide. You have to work your way up to that. So people do wonder, well, how come I don't have an SRT guide? They are very specialized guides. So if you aren't able to communicate with them, it would serve no purpose to have one. So my guides are capable of getting rid of stuff. Fergus clears stuff for me all the time. But on occasion, he does need to call for backup because there's only so much he can do. Especially keep in mind that, people get this confused quite often. Lizards are not egregors. An egregor is a thought form created through belief and manifestation, right? Demonic beings are a form of egregor. They are like Frankenstein's monster. Your belief is what creates them. Stored emotions and toxic energy and, all of that anger and aggression, that can create an egregor. Reptilians are not egregors. They are living, breathing creatures. And this is why I was joking around with Zach last night when they were talking about how they whooped my ass. For those of you who joined a bit late, I had a really bad psychic attack 2 nights ago, and they did. They basically had a blanket party in my honor. They kicked my ass while I was sleeping, and I woke up very, very sore, not knowing why. And so the guides, I was a bit like, well, what else can you do in that regard? And they say, well, they can beat you up, but that's about it. They can't really do more damage. And that's why I had a laugh, and I'm like, yeah, they can't e-test anymore. I bet they're really pissed off about that too. It's like being behind a screen. They can smell it, but they can't have it. So it does give me more confidence. In fact, it's almost kind of like a neener kind of thing. Like, even though you can beat up my astral body, you can't do hardly shit to my physical body. But this is why they like working with the Greys, because the Greys can start to do damage to your physical vessel. This is why the Greys are worse than the lizards themselves in many aspects. The lizards can convince you to self-harm. They can convince you that you hate yourself even when you don't. They do a lot of damage to the mind, but it's the Greys that can do damage to the physical. Why? Well, through their devices and their technology. All they have to do is put some devices in your chakras and you can get messed up physically. It creates all kinds of problems. So when you have energetic blockages in the body, that can create major issues in the physical body. So that's why having Greys on you is worse than having a lizard. I mean, if you have 3 lizards on you and they're trying to convince you to self-harm, then obviously you could argue that that's worse. But you can usually recognize when you're under psychic attack. That's when you've got phantom pain. Pain pops up for no reason. If you didn't bump your head on something, you should not be dealing with pain like that. If you've got really bad heart palpitations and the doctors can't figure out why, that's because, think of it like the bunny rabbit effect, right? A dog gets its mouth on a bunny, right? And then you take the bunny away from the dog. How much is that bunny's heartbeat pounding, right? That's why I call it the bunny effect, because even though you technically didn't get attacked by a dog, and you're fearful for your life, your physical body remembers being hunted. Your physical body, whether or not you're an earth seed or a star seed, you have dealt with lizards in the past before all of this quarantine happened. You remembered being hunted. Your physical body has not forgotten this. So that's why I call it the bunny effect, because you're feeling like a scared rabbit and your body is reacting to that. And you're like, why? What's the matter? Your body knows when they're around. In fact, I was hanging out with my sister and her kids, and my nephew has been dealing with Greys coming in and messing with him. My sister works with special needs children, and sometimes they follow her home. So I clear my sister regularly. And so every once in a while, I would find Greys on my youngest nephew, and it was very upsetting. Well, we were hanging out at the cabin, and all of a sudden, boom, I start getting heart palpitations. And I started thinking, okay, is it a lizard? No, I'm not feeling I'm not feeling like this nausea that I would normally feel with a lizard. I said, but I feel like this pounding in my chest that I couldn't really explain. And so I asked, well, later on in the evening what I was feeling, and they said there was a gray in the house. They said Fergus had to call us in. And I was like, okay. And they're like, he does not like them. I was like, really? Why? And he goes, well, first of all, Fergus says they smell really, really bad. In fact, he was a bit like he didn't want to touch it. Zach was joking. He's like, yeah, he needs like a 10-foot pole. And he didn't want to actually touch it because of how gross they are. So they calling in angelics to get rid of it. Because the heart palpitations went away. And I knew something was up. I was like, Fergus, I don't know what it is, but get it, please. It took a few minutes and then it went away. And I realized, okay, yes, he called in some backup and got rid of it. So later on that evening, I was asking Zach, I said, did he call you in? And Zach said, yes. And I said, what was it? And he goes, it was a gray that popped in. You could feel it in your chest. It gave my heart, it felt like a triple heartbeat rather than a ba-boom, ba-boom, ba-boom. It was like, brah, brah, brah. Like it was like Uzi fire on my chest. It was a very uncomfortable feeling. So anytime that you guys have any like feelings of ick, that nausea, the heart palpitations, anything like that, yep, that is a red flag. Yes, he is, Kristen. Yes, Fergus does wear a kilt. Yep. Rich said, do reptilians worship demons? No, they're more co-workers. They don't worship demons at all. They don't worship anything except themselves. Reptilians are pure narcissists. They are narcissists in every way, shape, and form. In fact, most of them have extreme delusions of grandeur. There was a child that we cleared the other day that said the mom was telling me that the child was saying some king came in. He was calling himself a king and was harassing the child. And she was saying, well, yeah, this being, was calling himself a king and this and that. And we look into it. And it was just a big, stupid lizard. And I said, why was he calling himself a king? And they're like, he's just delusional. That's just how they talk. So they love to pretend to be some famous person, or they'll claim to be an angelic, or they'll claim to be a galactic. They love to pretend to be a Pleiadian of some kind. And yeah, they can even show you an illusion to make themselves look that way. So I meet several mediums that are like, I've never seen a lizard. Yeah, because they don't want you to see them. They don't want you to see their true form. So they will come in pretending to be something else. Yeah, exactly, Kristen. I also thought of honestly, there's so much that I would love to help him with. I don't think he's crossed over either. Yeah, considering what he was shouting. I don't even want to say his name right now because I don't want to call attention to it. But I'm pretty sure he's not crossed over either. So I stay out of Hollywood. I would love to help him, but nope. Hollywood is probably where some of the biggest, darkest entities are. So somebody said, do entities speak all languages? If you have telepathy, you can understand most languages. Telepathy is a deeper understanding of things without needing words. So yes, they can virtually understand what you're saying, even if they don't actually speak that language. Liv says lizards are ridiculous and I love telling them off. Same here. Like I said, if I piss them off, it brings me joy. That raises my vibration. To know that we pissed them off somehow. And it made me laugh too that those two ran away. I was sovereign by the time I woke up because those pussies ran off. They knew what would happen. Although Fergus was still locked in the jar. He was still behind that force field. We had to get Zen to let him out after I woke up. He was not happy. He was not happy at all. So this is why I say keep in mind, a lot of people are like, well, where were my soul guides when I was under attack? They were watching. They were locked up themselves and unfortunately unable to assist. Rich says, what kind of karma do evil reptilians get? Ugh, don't get me started on this, Rich. This is why I go back to feeling like the unfairness of it all. Most of the time, karma is chosen by the individual. So let's say that you have screwed people over and your higher self decides there's certain things that you need to work on. It will kind of give you a to-do list. Your higher self will be like, all right, you got to incarnate again. You didn't forgive this. You didn't fix this. You didn't make amends for this. You're going to have to do this, 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 and this. So karma is unfinished business that you're still working on. And until you get to the point in your soul evolution that you want to work on that, you just end up digging a deeper hole for yourself. Quite literally. That's usually how it works. You just keep digging yourself deeper and deeper and deeper. And it could take, if you have one incarnation where you were screwing over a lot of people, then, you've accumulated a lot of karma. But keep in mind, there's something interesting about lizards. How many of you are meat eaters? Do you feel guilty every time you eat chicken? Do you feel guilty when you eat a steak? Do you think a lizard should feel guilty for playing with his food? They don't feel so. Could you imagine if we humans accumulated karma for every chicken we've ever eaten, every pig we've ever eaten, every cow we've ever eaten? Can you imagine the amount of karma that we would accumulate if every time we ate a living being, we dug ourselves deeper? So that's their idea. That is why they don't feel guilt. They don't feel shame. They don't feel remorse. They don't feel they owe any recompense. They feel they're just doing what lizards do. Does that accumulate karma? Not really. Nope. So I'm not telling people to go vegan at all. I'm not vegan and I'm not vegetarian. I was originally. I was vegetarian for 3 years. I was vegan for about 8 months, and my hair started falling out. I'm just using this as an analogy so you understand. So no, I went back to being a meat eater because that is what I was raised. I grew up on a farm. We used to raise our own pigs and chickens. Growing up on a farm, you're programmed to have that. And if you grow up on a vegan lifestyle, it's easier to do that. But when you've had an upbringing the way that I have, we grew our own food and we raised our own food. And my body was basically, it was somebody in the chat. Gotcha. So, your body has certain needs. And for those of you who know about the Eat Right for your blood type, Dr. Adamo has studied this, where he explained that certain requirements for certain vessels need other things that others might not. And with me having A negative blood, they explained that a pescatarian diet is the best one for me. And so it's right. I have done a pescatarian diet, and that is when I'm healthiest. When it's kind of like a half Mediterranean, half pescatarian type of thing, that is when I'm healthiest. And yes, that is what I'm planning on doing. In fact, on Monday, I'm starting a keto diet where it's predominantly vegetables, but with fish and chicken, and that's it. The guides have explained that the longer the animal has been alive, the more poison has gone into it. So just keep that in mind when you are eating like pigs and cows and things like that, that it's the vibration of the fear, but also the chemicals, the jabs that they give it, and a whole bunch of other factors. So even though you may be avoiding these, if you are eating food that has received these, you are still ingesting the chemicals and the adjuvants and even the nanobots that are in that. You might be getting it from a food source rather than directly, but you're still getting it. So eating clean, living food is hands down the most important aspect. Know where your food comes from. Very, very important in this, okay? Because otherwise it's not about what you're eating, it's how it was treated before you ate it. You can have abused carrots, okay? You can have heavily processed. You ever seen those little carrots that have been like reformed to be like these little baby carrots, right? They chop up carrots and they reform them into perfect little shapes. That Franken carrot is probably more dangerous to you than the chicken might have been if it was, organic and free range. So it's not just about, whether or not your food suffered. Factory farming, can you imagine the vibration of an animal from factory farming? So it's not just about what we eat, it's how it was raised, how it was treated. And even our vegetables can be sprayed with poisons that will make it more dangerous than a lot of other things that you could be eating. So get to know where you get your food from. Make sure that you trust the source. And like I said, people wonder why reptiles don't end up with karma. Can you imagine if humans ended up with karma from the food that they eat? So, yes, it is a bit of a loophole. They consider it to be playing their food. That's not to say that people who live in a factory farm, who work at a factory farm, you come in and you kick a cow when it's about to be killed and you prolong the suffering and make it more miserable. Absolutely, I do believe that you get karma from that. I don't know how it works because I haven't really asked in that regard. But it's all about how you treat something before if you exploit it. Animals have an understanding on this planet that many of them, especially those who are raised for food, that this is part of their, it's the shit end of the stick you get for coming here. If you want a human experience, then yeah, even humans end up abused and tortured, but you wanted to be human. This is kind of the agreement you make. When you go down there, you are in competition with everybody else. And if your free will wants one thing and somebody else's free will wants another thing, and it puts you at odds together, and one of you mistreats the other, or if both of you mistreat each other, that is how you accumulate the karma. So it's one thing to have needs for survival, right? A lion is not going to get karma for eating a human. In fact, that literally was literally a resonance that we had on a client this morning. I said, is there any resonances? And they said, oh yeah, she got eaten by a lion. I was like, I wonder if she likes cats in this life. Do you think a lion feels guilty for eating a human? No. Do you think a lizard should feel guilty for trying to consume a human's life force? It's all about perspective, right? You got to understand that even the lizards come from source. Even the lizards. They have souls. Where do you think that soul came from? That soul might have gotten twisted and manipulated and distorted and God knows what else has happened to it to make it that pure evil kind of vibe. And maybe at some point in their soul evolution, they will have to start working on some of the things that they did to humans while they were here. Who knows? But you don't have to work on those things until your higher self decides it's time to work on it. Until that's the assignment. So when they get sent back to source, is it an immediate trip to rehab? Basically, when we clear a reptilian, people are like, what do you mean you cleared it? I mean, like our team shows up like Astral SWAT. They collect the entities there. They put them in shackles or some kind of cuffs or in some kind of a cage. They bring them to a place where they store them. They're literally in like a jail. I see it in my mind's eye. Have you seen that movie, Jurassic Park, one of the more recent ones, right? And they were going around collecting dinosaurs and they have them in like these cages and they plan to like sell them off on an auction. That scene when you have all the dinosaurs in the cages, that is how I see it in my mind's eye. That's exactly how I see it. So what do they do with them? Well, the guides told me that they are taken somewhere for rehabilitation. If their soul is ready to be rehabilitated, if they can change their ways to a degree, then they are given an opportunity. So when we were joking around earlier about the half of a reptilian, these rookies that we were talking about, the ones in training, if they can be rehabilitated to recognize where, they need to change their ways, then yes, there is a process of re-education that they will go through. If they are so nasty that they don't want to change and they have no interest in changing and they enjoy tormenting humans for sport, then those fuckers get sent to source. They will literally be knocked out of their body. They will take their soul out of the body gets recycled, and the soul gets sent back to source. And they have to start their soul evolution over again from scratch, from starting at like single-celled organisms. And it's like, all right, well, you fucked up somewhere. Now you get to start over. Because obviously something ended up somewhere getting corrupted for that soul to even want to incarnate as a reptilian. So people even argue, like, how do these things happen? Well, it happens through soul experience. And there are narcissistic souls out there who are so self-entitled, so self-absorbed, and so ignorant about how they make other people feel. And they are so anti-source. In fact, most reptilians don't even know what source is. They're so far removed and so ill-educated that many of them don't even know that females of their own race exist. So the ironic thing in most of this is that reptilians are slaves too, most of them. Most of them are not calling the shots. Most of them are doing what they're told. And sometimes they're sent as cannon fodder. Sometimes they send them to mess with us and we're like, you realize you're about to die, right? If you come and fuck with us, you're going to die. Like, just so you know, we will straight up send you back to source. And they're like, what's that? They have no idea. So our threats don't really have as much meaning to them when they're like, huh? Can you imagine? They have no idea. There's a lot of humans that don't know what source is. And a lot of us have that in common with lizards. They don't know that their souls are so far removed from it that they don't even know it exists. Well, they're about to find out. Come and mess with us and then you'll find out. Can you tell I'm feeling spicy today? Can a human reincarnate as a reptilian? Yeah. And reptilians can reincarnate as humans. Yep. I've found them. I've had people book clearings for people and they're like, this guy is a real piece of work. He's awful. He's like stalking women and he's abusive and violent and all these things. He's a complete narcissist. And then we look into it and we find out, oh yeah, he's a starseed, but not a good one. You know how we talk about light workers, right? Well, there are dark workers here too. There are dark workers who are quite literally either Orion types, because there are Orion starseeds who are not good. They're those dark elf types. Or we straight up get people who are lizards incarnating in a human body. And sometimes people are like, well, can you clear this person? And we're like, he loves reptiles, like to the point where as soon as we clear him, he'll just be calling in new ones. And then we look into their soul history and we find out, oh, wait a minute, they were. They were a reptilian. No wonder they like calling forward more lizards. And how many people are out there that are incarnating with these people and have no idea that that's why they are the way they are? Like I said, you're born with a personality based on your soul history. And if your soul history was reptilian, you're not going to be a nice person in most cases when you've chosen a human vessel. You still get that nature of, well, being violent and abusive and trying to feed off of other people. You may not even know you're doing that. Exactly, Summer. That's the duality of being here on Earth. Somebody said, is it okay to like real reptiles? I love snakes. I used to have a ball python that I wore as a necklace. I used to take him out to grocery stores. You wouldn't believe the reactions I got wearing a snake necklace. People would be like all close to me and then they'd see the snake and then they'd give me a 6-foot wide berth. They'd be like, ah! And they step back 6 feet. You know, if you want to keep strong boundaries, wear a snake around your neck when you go out in public. People won't go anywhere near you, especially in South Africa, right? No, I love snakes and other reptiles. I'm not fearful of them at all. In fact, this is part of the reason why I laugh about the bigger, scarier ones, because I have no fear of them. They're just animals. And they're not related. Even though, I mean, crocodiles and reptilians do have quite a few things in common. In fact, an actual Draco has a more like a crocodile type of face. They have a long face with a big snout. The Draco do. Not the Usungal or the Kingu. Those are the ones that are more hybridized with humans, and they kind of have more of like a velociraptor, like a short, stubby face, like a boxer. They have a short nose, right? Those are the ones that are hybridized with humans, and that's why I say reptilians are slaves themselves, because most of the Kingu and Usungal, the hybridized ones, they're at the bottom of the food chain when it comes to Draco. They have a hierarchy among themselves, right? With white Draco usually being at the top, and then you have the regular Draco, and then you have the lieutenants, which are basically like they're just highly motivated to screw shit up. You know, they're trying to prove themselves. And then they have, you know, it's like a step down pyramid. Who are they slaves to? To themselves. They have a pecking order, so to speak. Or I should call it a pissing order if you think about wild dogs. It's the same kind of concept. You know? The ones that are more dominant and more controlling and more powerful because they have technology or because they're older or because they have more connections or because they're working with a stronger other type of being, so they're feeling more empowered. Those are the ones that are at the top of the pyramid, so to speak. Keith says, I feel like we're just pets for extraterrestrials. You're not that wrong, Keith, to be fair. You know, they're like, good human. I wouldn't say pets from the nice ones. The reptilians do look at us like we're food. They look at us like we're cattle. But the other guides, the more benevolent guides, just look at us like we're young children. They do it in a loving way. They don't look at you like you're a pet. That's more of an entity type of thing. Somebody's asking about archons. Archons are usually, they're archdemons, as above, so below, right? So they're like a vibrational equivalent to an archangel, but the opposite. And they do exist. There's a handful of them here on Earth. Most of the time, they stay in war zones where there's a lot of food. They're another reason why we don't go clearing anyone in war zones or cities that are war zones. We're avoiding those buggers. And they are the ones at the very tippy top of the totem pole. They work very closely with white Draco, which are the highest rank, really, of lizards as they get. So yeah, those are the ones we do our best to avoid, and that's why I don't usually talk about them, because I don't like to get their attention. As you say, the things you focus on, you attract, and that is one thing I am not trying to attract. I've had a conversation with one once, and that was one of the most uncomfortable experiences I have ever had. It was trying to come in as an imposter, and I caught the bastard. I knew. I mean, I'm not fucking stupid. Like, we're very good at catching imposters. And so when this one came in and tried to speak, it was through one of our mediums. This medium is no longer in the academy. This medium had to step away because this thing got its claws in her, and there wasn't really much that could be done in that instance. And this was about 8 months ago that this happened. And I knew what was wrong. In fact, it told me something that I knew immediately was bullshit, and I called it out. And I said, I know that you're lying about who you are. I know that true guide, that true archangel who you're pretending to be, would never say something like that. And I was able to discern. And as soon as I called him out on it, he gave me a really creepy smirk. Really creepy. And then I got one of the worst psychic attacks that I've ever had. And I joke about it now. I joke that it made me feel, the best description I could give for the feeling it made me feel in that moment when I called it out and it smirked at me, it felt like I got flushed down the toilet. I swear to God, that's exactly how it felt. It felt like getting flushed down the toilet. I started to get the spins. I feeling this sinking sensation, and I felt like I was drowning. Straight up. I took like maybe 5 steps. I got up, I ended the call, I took a few steps, and I immediately got sick. I threw up. I mean, it straight up felt like I was getting flushed down the toilet. One of the most uncomfortable feelings I've ever felt. And it knew, like I said, when I called it out and was like, I know who you are. That's when it was like I said, the creepiest smirk I've ever seen come out of somebody, especially in trance. So what happened? I went and told my entire academy. I told everybody, every single one of my students, I called an emergency meeting, and I told everybody in my academy what happened. And because like I said, they would have loved it if I hadn't said something. And you know what's interesting? Every person that person had been in contact with had a sigil on them. So that little bastard was running around basically, like branding every person that teacher was talking to. Every person that she worked on ended up with a brand. So I had to say something. I had to. It was, it was a very uncomfortable thing to have to talk about. I asked the guides what we could do in order to get rid of it, and they said she would have to quit working. She would have to quit. Because anytime she would do any form, you could quit for 5 years and quit refusing to do any more Reiki. You could refuse to do any more SRT. You could go back to living a pure in the matrix kind of job and lifestyle. And if 5 years from now you decide to do some Reiki on somebody, that thing would know and be like, oh, we're back to that, are we? Haha. So we don't know how to get rid of something like that. In fact, the guides told me, I said, well, could you kill it? That was my first question. Can we clear it? Can we do it? And they said, no, because technically we could, but then you're going to get the attention of something even bigger. And they all know each other. They have friends in very low places, we'll put it that way. So they were like, we could call in an equally strong archangel to take it out, but at the same time, you would get on a radar of something even worse. And I was like, let's not do that then. Good to know. So we just avoid it now. And you have to be very clever. You have to, like I said, what we do when it comes to spotting imposters is the most important aspect of our work. It really is. Because spotting these imposters, if they can get in and they get really clever sometimes, they can ruin your whole life. And not only that, but they love to do what we call a typhoid Mary situation, where they basically control your healing, right? Like the actual practitioner is fine. She's not feeling the heart palpitations. Can't speak today. Heart palpitations. She's not feeling the nausea or any psychic attacks. But every time she goes to work on somebody as a healer, they're getting picked up. So they're getting a brand. They were getting attacked. It was the clients of that individuality, of that individual that were being exposed to it. And for those who know who Typhoid Mary is, Typhoid Mary was a woman who was spreading typhoid even though she was immune to it. She was feeling fine. She had typhoid and was not feeling any illness whatsoever. But every single person that she went and worked in the families of, she was working as a housekeeper and as a cook. So every time a family would die, she would have to go get new employment, and she would start working as a chef in another kitchen. And then all the family members would get sick and die. And then she'd be like, shit, I'm out of a job again. And then she would bounce. This happened like 6 times before they recognized what the common denominator was. So this is why, as a healer, there's even more responsibility when something feels off, or if you feel blocked, or if you feel that something isn't right about your spirit team, that you are very, very careful and even book a clearing just to make sure that your guides are actually authentic, because unfortunately, this is what they're best at. If you're somebody who's a very powerful healer, somebody said, so since your team found an imposter on me, it means I cannot do healing work. I was talking about archons, honey. You did not have one of those. I have found one in 9,000 clearings I've done. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying that every healer needs discernment. You need to be aware of when it feels like when you're sovereign versus when you're not sovereign. So that one healer, that one particular instance is what I'm talking about, where the guides were like, yeah, exactly. She was a carrier. And unfortunately, we do find a lot of compromised healers out there that create like a black web to each of their clients without even knowing it, because they don't recognize that they're not sovereign. So That's who I'm talking about. Rich says, who would you say is the most evil being in the totem pole? Who I was just talking about. They take the cake. They're the cake and the frosting. Okay. They are the reason, and I'm pretty sure they're the reason why things do not change on this planet. Because it's one thing, when it comes to lizards, yeah, once you start recognizing that they're around, it's the biggest secret that they don't want people to know is that they exist. Somebody said, so Satan isn't the most evil. Satan is a human construct. We made that up. So if there is a being that resembles that, it would be a very empowered demonic that was created through collective belief. That's not what I'm talking about. So yeah, they would definitely be at the top. So this is why I try not to give them any attention and why I don't usually like talking about them, because you know what they say, the more you talked about something, the more you attract it. Exactly, Nicholas. I don't even like saying that name. I'm sure humans and Christians especially love to throw around Satan's name and all of that, but that's just a creation from humans. In fact, if you think about it, 500 years ago, he didn't even exist. That was created later on by the church, long after the Bible was written. Especially the Baphomet version that you guys see, that version is only like 500 years old. Or no, that's right. When they created that, when they were trying to demonize the Templar, that's when the Baphomet was created. Later on, many, many hundreds of years later, if you look it up, it was the Vatican that created the Baphomet. You know why? Because they were trying to say that the Templars were worshiping it. So that was all made up. That was used in order to take out the Templars. And because people have seen that and they run with it and they believe that, they create an egregor version of that. So it doesn't exist technically unless humans, it's kind of like the Tinkerbell thing, right? Remember talking about Tinkerbell and they're like, you have to believe, you have to believe. And if you doubt something and if you don't believe in something, or if all the people who believe in a certain deity were to die and nobody is carrying on that belief, would it disappear? Yeah, it would. It's the belief that manifests it. So if the belief disappears, the being will disappear because it's just a thought form. It's just an egregor. So if everybody tomorrow woke up and didn't believe in Satan, Satan wouldn't exist. There'd be no egregor in the astral. It would just disappear into thin air. So it's the collective belief and people talking about it and using it as a scapegoat that creates this version in the astral that people can be like, oh yeah, that thing exists. Well, yeah, because you're talking about it. I could come up with an evil version of Santa Claus, like Krampus, for example, who's stalking individuals in the astral. And the more I talk about evil Krampus, the more there's likely to become a Krampus in the astral that's causing problems and scaring people. So this is one of the reasons why we're stuck in that quarantine that I'm always talking about, because they don't want to let us out. They don't want us manifesting this kind of shit on other planets. So until we get a hold of our beliefs and our religious brainwashing and all the crap that goes along with it, then there's going to be even more of this manifesting. And this is why they don't let humans out of quarantine. They don't want us manifesting egregors on other planets. This rule doesn't just exist here. It exists everywhere. Somebody says, since you don't like talking about certain negative entities, then why does this not apply to reptilians and other beasties you talk about a lot? Just because I don't like talking about the biggest beasties that exist on the planet doesn't mean that I'm scared of the smaller little shit versions of them that exist. I have absolutely no fear whatsoever when it comes to any of these beings, period. What I do have is healthy caution. Because when you talk about things or people, they know, they hear it. You name drop someone and they know. So the more you talk about things, the more you can attract their attention. And I don't really give a shit about talking about lizards. Fucking bring it. You want to get sent to source too? You know? I'm kind of like Neo, where I'm like, come on, bring it. I have no fear when it comes to them. But these bigger beasties I'm talking about, they could take down a plane. We've seen them do it. They can choke out the fuel lines and boom, whole plane going down. Why? Because they get food from that. So you think I want to fuck with something like that? No. Like I said, it's not fear, it's healthy caution. I know better than to talk shit to things that could fuck me up. Okay? That's why. So, but when it comes to lizards and grays and all that other stuff, you want to go to source? I got a one-way ticket for you. And that's why at the beginning of the podcast, like I was saying, I kind of have like this neener thing. If you think about it, Zoran, my past life before I got stuck here, Zoran was getting eaten, right? There people were getting harassed and eaten and abused by these beings. And we were getting gang stalked across the whole galactic universe, basically, by these beings. And now they can't touch this. They want to eat us and they can't. And that makes me happy. That makes me kind of like, hee hee. So if you wonder where my cockiness comes from, it is kind of from the fact that they can't eat us anymore. But I do try to be respectful because, like I said, everybody has a reason for existing. We're all source, right? We're all learning as we go. And I even do have respect for reptilians to a degree because I know how much of an ancient race they are. And I know they have friends in high places. So even though I'm not scared of them, I still don't go actively trying to look for trouble, if you know what I mean. If I find the trouble, especially when it comes to the clients that I have, you know, no regrets. Especially when we could take out a whole network of grays and collect 50 grays in one shot. That feels really good to me. So even though I did get, you know, a few sore muscles over the retaliation for that, it was worth it. Hands down, it was worth it. So somebody says, why can't they eat us anymore? I missed that part. Do you see lizards walking around in 3D? We're out of phase with each other. That was done intentionally. The whole quarantine thing, we're in 3D, they're in a higher vibration of 4D. Why are we in a lower frequency than they are? Well, because that's part of how the quarantine works. If they were in the same frequency, do you think there'd be this many humans running around? No, they would have eaten us down to the last man, woman, and child like they did on other planets. Do you think they're happy about being in the quarantine? Absolutely not. Why do you think they have such a sport when it comes to messing with humans? So what they eat physically, they have to eat either people that go down underground. It's not 3D underground. The 3D frequencies that are being emitted from the moon that comes here and lowers our frequency, that doesn't penetrate deep underground. So if you go wandering in some of these dark network tunnels underground, you end up inadvertently going into deeper frequencies. And so, yeah, you could get eaten going down there. That's why a lot of people end up in tunnel systems and don't come out. You can also be brought down there to a degree, but that doesn't happen to as many people as you'd think. In fact, most of them are eating synthetic meat. They sustain their armies through synthetic meat down there. And they're not happy about it. They complain that it lacks flavor. Can you imagine? It's like they're eating beyond meat and they're not happy about it. So that's why the really high-ranking ones are associated with the cabal and all of this, and they are being actively fed into that degree. And that's why so many people are kind of invested in what it means to be in this 5D shift, because are we going to pass through their frequency? Are we actually going to be able to see them? Nobody knows. We're hoping that we can kind of hop, skip over it, where we jump from 3D to 5D. And as we're passing through 4D, maybe it's just a very thin, short-term thing. I did have a dream once where I was watching rednecks like running around with their big pickup trucks and their shotguns, like riding around in the back of the truck hunting lizards like they do gators. I did have a dream like that once. I did wonder if that was going to happen. Could you imagine? Next being like, I'm going lizard hunting. I'm getting me a new pair of boots. I mean, We could end up in Orion Wars 2.0. Who knows? I don't think so, though, personally. I think that we're going to kind of hop, skip, and jump over that. Because our vibration is going up and up more and more every day. So maybe it'll just be a short period, or maybe it won't happen at all. It's entirely possible, Kenzie. There's a whole lot of different things that can end up to somebody that disappeared. We know this because we've tuned in to people who were missing when it comes to lost soul rescues. In fact, there was one gentleman who got lost in a park. He was a ranger. He disappeared somewhere in Arizona. We checked on him and they said he got eaten. Straight up. He got eaten. He wandered into the wrong cave system and the lizard grabbed him. It was a weird case too. Like his clothes were found by his campsite all neatly folded and stuff. And they were like, where did he go? He's just running around in the desert naked? No. They just brought his clothes back. Somebody did. So anyway, I've been having so much fun hanging out with you guys that I went way over today. But I kind of owed you guys that since I've been gone for so long. And there's been a lot more going on that I haven't even talked about today, but I don't want to overwhelm. I've already kind of went off topic a few times. So it was really great to see you guys. And thank you for joining me today. And I will be back, like I said, regular scheduling now, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. The podcast will be on. And on Monday, I will be doing the mentorship chat on Astara. So if you would like to hang out with us over Zoom, you're welcome to join us on Monday for that. It was really fun catching up with you guys. And I hope you all have a magical weekend. Oh, there is one thing. Ella and I are going to be doing a Meet Your Soul Guides meditation. It will be on the 29th, so not this weekend, but the next weekend. We are only charging $11.11 for this, $11.11. It will be a 3-part meditation where you basically, we're going to run you through the clearing. So we're going to do a self-clearing. And then we'll teach you how to cleanse your own energy through this meditation, etc. Then the second part will be introducing you to your soul guides, helping you to connect with your guides, to see them visually in your mind's eye, to be able to learn their names, to learn where they came from. We'll lead you through a whole guided meditation to connect with your team. And then we're even going to help you to set up a password. So you'll be able to set up a password so you'll be able to meet your guides, get it clearing, and be able to set up a password for your team, all in this one meditation. That's how I've designed it. Ella and I will be doing this together. It is on my website. So if you go to my website and you look up courses, live courses, so go to services, and at the bottom, you'll see it says live courses. It's up there. We're also promoting, you'll see we've got the Reiki 1 that's coming back up. So if you're interested in doing Reiki 1 with Kara and I, that is also available. We raised the price to $144 instead of $111. The reason for that is because we are getting an official certification through the actual Reiki channels, and you'll be getting a workbook this time. Kara and I have been working hard on that, on actually getting connected with Kara's amazing. She really wants this to be as legit as possible. So she's been going through the official Reiki channels. So you will be officially recognized as a Reiki healer from the official Reiki organization. And that will require getting an actual workbook from them. So this one is even, it's bigger and more in depth. All of our classes are recorded. All of them. If you can't attend live, you will receive a recording. If you are busy on the 29th and you can't do the meditation live, you will still get the same results when you are doing it as a recording. The guides will know when you're tuning into the info stream, so you will still get a clearing. So, like I said, it's only an hour-long meditation. That's why we're charging $11.11 for it. So you'll be able to get a clearing that day. You'll be able to get a deeper connection to your spirit team. And then you'll also be able to set up a password and get to know your guides to the point where you don't have to worry so much about imposters sneaking in. It will help you to strengthen your connection to your team, and it will allow you to connect with your team in a safe space that is well protected. We are going to do SRT too, but it's probably going to be around Christmas, if not the beginning of the year, because I'm adding a whole bunch of new stuff, and I'm in the process of training some new mediums right now. I've got 2 other people who are almost ready with their mediumship to be able to do SRT. And as I mentioned, we just recently certified Ella. She's been doing so amazing with her channeling, and you guys will get to meet her on Wednesday. Again, well, those of you who've met her before, you'll also be able to meet her guide Zen, because Zen will come on and say hello with us and be able to answer some questions. So if you didn't receive the recording from a past class, you probably just didn't notice that was in your spam folder. So you can just message us and we're happy to resend that for you. Somebody says they don't see it. So let me just fetch the link. If you go to Astro Lara, you go to services, upcoming live events and classes. There we go. And I'm dropping it for you in the chat right there. See, that's the link. Astro Lara, services, and live events. If you're on your phone trying to book it, scroll to the very bottom under services and you'll see live events. And then the sign up will be right there. See, so that will be $11.11. $11.11. It's an hour-long meditation. And like I said, just the fact that you're getting a clearing in itself is, I mean, we're obviously not doing this to make money, because you're not going to make that much charging only $11. But we're doing this because you guys need this. Many of you are asking, how do I connect with my guides, etc. Angela said, is Adriana doing okay? She's still doing SRT with me. Yes, every day. Adriana has been traveling. She's still not home in Grenada yet. She'll be back over the weekend. So Adriana has been very busy. She's been running around all over Europe doing clearings and visiting family. So yes, you will even get to speak with Zach at some point soon. I just have to work all that out and see how she's doing. I still see Adriana almost every single day to do clearings. So if you guys have any other questions, please save them for Monday. It was really wonderful to see you guys, and thank you so much. And like I said, if you guys have any questions about the classes, signing up, there's the link. One more time, thank you, Charisse. If you haven't received a recording from a previous class, then you should message me, because we always make sure that you get that recording. So it might have gone into your spam folder or something. For those, I saw Linda's asking what time. On the 29th, it will be at 12 p.m. Eastern time. That's 5 p.m. in the UK, and that'll be like 9 a.m. in California. So just work out the time difference if you're in Australia or something. And yes, we will be doing SRT too. I'm just in the process of training my mediums. I've got a couple more mediums that I'm really focused on training right now. It's a big process, and I have enough facilitators for now. I need mediums. All right. Oh, look at that. Perfect timing. 222, Fergus. I love you guys. I hope you all have a magical weekend. I look forward to seeing you all on Monday. Lots of love, everybody. And yes, you can restart the recording just now as you would like if you want to rewatch the podcast, for those of you who have attended late. Mwah! Bye, everyone.